At my sister's graduation party, my uncle raised his glass to celebrate her achievements and called me the embarrassment of the family. Everyone clapped and laughed at the cruel joke, but when I stood and shared my own secret accomplishment, the entire room froze in silence. Do I need to get this out before I lose my mind completely? 5 months ago I thought I was the victim of my family's cruelty. Tonight I realize I was just a coward looking for excuses. It started at my sister Emma's college graduation party. The whole extended family was there, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone dressed and proud. Emma had just gotten her degree in engineering with highest honors, landed a job at some prestigious firm, the whole golden child package. I was sitting there with my girlfriend Sarah, who had driven 3 hours with me to be there. Sarah, who worked 2 jobs to help me through my failed attempts at community college. Sarah, who never once made me feel small even when I dropped out the second time. My uncle Jerry stood during dinner, glass of raised eye. I want to make a toast, he announced, voice carrying across the backyard. To Emma, who proves that at least one person in this generation knows how to make something of themselves. Everyone chuckled. Standard family ribbing, right? Then Jerry's eyes found mine across the table. Unlike some people who are pushing 30 and still figuring out what they want to be when they grow. Marcus here is our family's biggest embarrassment, but hey, at least he's consistent. The entire table erupted in laughter. Aunts covering their mouths, cousins snickering, even my own parents chuckling like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. 23 people laughing at the joke that was my. Sarah's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight. I should have focused on that. On her loyalty. On how she immediately whispered, let's just go, when she saw my face burning red. Instead I stood. Actually, Uncle Jerry, I have an announcement too. My voice was shaking but everyone went quiet. I've been keeping a secret from all of. The silence was complete. Emma looked worried. My mom's eyes went wide. Sarah and I have been talking about marriage. And she said yes when I asked her last month. I pulled out the ring I'd bought with money from selling my car. A simple band, nothing fancy but it was real. Sarah gasped beside me, her face going white. We're engaged, I continued, riding the wave of shocked silence. So maybe I'm not such an embarrassment after all. The quiet stretched on forever. Then my dad cleared his throat. Son, did actually propose to Sarah or are just saying this to get back at Jerry? That's when I felt it. The horrible, sinking realization. I looked at Sarah, whose face had gone from shock to something worse. Something like heartbreak. Because she knew. Everyone at that table knew I hadn't proposed. I had bought a ring, yes, thinking about it for weeks. But I never actually asked her. Never gotten down on one knee. Never had the conversation. I just used the idea of marrying her as a weapon against my family's mockery. Marcus. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. What are doing? The table was staring. My sister looked mortified. My uncle Jerry had this smug little smile like he'd just proven his point about what a mess I was. I opened my mouth to explain, to backtrack, to fix it somehow. But what came out was worse. I mean, we've talked about it, haven't we? No, we're heading in that direction. Sarah stood so fast her chair fell backward. Her hands were shaking as she looked at me, then at the ring, then at the faces of my entire family watching this disaster unfold. I need some air, she said and walked away from the table. I should have followed her immediately. Should have apologized, explained that I panicked, that I loved her and wanted to marry her but did it all wrong. Instead I sat back down and tried to play it off. Made jokes about surprising her with a public proposal. While my family exchanged glances that said everything about what kind of man I was. When I finally went to find Sarah 20 minutes later, she was sitting in my car crying. How could do that to me? She asked without looking. How could use something that sacred as a way to embarrass Uncle? I tried to explain. Tried to say I really did want to marry her. That I'd just done it wrong, that I panicked. But Sarah knew me too well. She could see right through to the truth I didn't want to admit to her. Didn't want to propose. Marcus wanted to win an argument and use me to do it. We drove home in silence. She moved out 3 days later. I kept telling she overreacted. That my family was the real problem. That if they hadn't embarrassed me, none of this would have happened. I spent weeks crafting the perfect victim story in my head. Poor Marcus, misunderstood by his cruel family, abandoned by his girlfriend over one mistake. But tonight, sitting alone in my empty apartment, I finally understand the truth. I didn't lose Sarah because of one bad moment. I lost her because that moment revealed exactly who I am. A man who would rather the woman he claims to love than admit he's not where he wants to be in. A man who uses other people's hearts as shields against his own insecurities. My uncle was right about one thing. I am the family embarrassment, but not for the reasons I thought. 3 months convinced I was ready to move on. Translation: I was tired of feeling like garbage and wanted someone to make me feel better about. Enter Jessica from my gym. 24, marketing coordinator, the kind of smile that made me forget Sarah ever existed, at least for a few hours at a time. Jessica didn't know about my spectacular failure at Emma's graduation. Didn't know I was the guy who proposed to get back at his uncle. To her, I was just Marcus, mysterious, recently single, working on himself at the gym every day. I should mention I wasn't actually working on. I was just lifting weights, angry and calling it self-improvement. Jessica and I started talking after a particularly pathetic display where I nearly dropped a barbell on my chest. She spotted me, made a joke about my form, and suddenly I was telling her about my recent breakup. Where my ex couldn't handle my ambition. Yes, I actually said that. About Sarah. The woman who worked double shift to support my dreams while I figured out what those dreams even were. But Jessica bought it, or maybe she just liked the attention. Either way, we started texting constantly, coffee dates, lunch meetings, long conversations about our goals and futures. For the first time in months, I felt like maybe I wasn't completely broken. The problem was I was still broken. I was just really good at hiding it. 2 weeks into whatever Jessica and I were doing, my phone buzzed during one of our coffee dates. A text from my mom. Emma's engagement photos are gorgeous. So happy she found someone who appreciates her. Attached was a picture of Emma beaming next to some guy in a perfectly fitted suit. Both of them looking like they stepped out of a magazine. The kind of engagement photo Sarah and I would never have because I'd ruined that possibility forever. Jessica noticed my face change. Everything okay? I should have said yes. Should have put the phone away and focused on the woman across from me who was genuinely interested in getting to know me. Instead I heard saying, my sister just got engaged. It's complicated. Complicated how? And then, because I'm apparently incapable of learning from my mistakes, I told her everything. The graduation party. The proposal. How my family had always treated me like a failure. But here's the thing about telling story to someone new, get to edit it. Make more sympathetic. Leave out the parts that make look bad. In my version, Sarah was unable to handle pressure. My family was and unsupportive. The proposal became grand romantic gesture that went wrong because of bad timing. Jessica dated. Suddenly I wasn't just a guy she was casually dating. I was a wounded hero who needed healing. Deserves so much better, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Someone who believes in. I should have stopped her there. Should have been honest about who I really was. Instead, I leaned into it. Started telling her about all my big plans. For the future. How I was going to show everyone they were wrong about me. How I deserved someone who could see my potential. Jessica became my enabler. Every complaint about my family she validated. Every excuse I made for my failures, she supported. Every lie I told about being misunderstood she reinforced. We were official within a month. The night I changed my relationship status on social media, I got a text from Sarah's best friend Katie. Really? Already? That was fast. I wanted to text back something defensive. Something about how I had every right to move on. How Sarah was the one who left. How goes on. But looking at Jessica's photos now filling my Instagram feed, her perfect smile, her inspirational quotes about choosing happiness, her obvious excitement about our future together, I felt sick. Because I knew I was doing it again. Using another woman's feelings to make feel better about my own inadequacy. Jessica deserved someone who wanted her for who she was, not someone who needed her to validate his victim complex. But I was in too deep to back out now. She'd already introduced me to her friends as the one. Already started talking about me moving in with her. Already begun planning our future together. And the worst part, I let her, because it felt good to be wanted again. To be seen as someone worth fighting for. To have someone believe I was better than my circumstances suggested. Even if I knew it was all built on lies. The breaking point came at Jessica's company Christmas party. I was standing there in my one decent suit, listening to her coworkers talk about their careers and achievements, when Jessica introduced me to her boss. This is Marcus, she said, practically glowing with pride. He's working on some really exciting entrepreneurial projects. Tell him about the consulting business we're starting. I had mentioned once, in passing, that I was thinking about consulting. It was barely even a thought, just something I'd said to avoid admitting I was still working part-time at a sporting goods store. But Jessica had turned it into this whole narrative about my ambition and drive. Her boss looked interested, started asking detailed questions about my business plan, my client base, my projections for growth. I stood there glass in hand, completely exposed. No business plan, no clients, no consulting business at all. Just another lie I told to make sound more impressive than I was. Well, I stammered. It's still in the planning stages. Of course, Jessica jumped in, squeezing my arm. Marcus is really thorough. He wants to make sure everything is perfect before he launches. The look of pride on her face broke something inside me. She actually believed in this fictional version of me, had built her feelings around a man who didn't exist. And I had let her. I excused to the bathroom and stared at my reflection in the mirror. Same face that had lied to Sarah about proposing. Same mouth that had just invented a whole business to impress strangers. I was doing it again, using someone else's love as a bandage for my own self-hatred. But this time, I couldn't even pretend it was anyone else's fault. When I came back to the party, Jessica was showing her coworkers the promise ring I'd bought her the week before. Another grand gesture designed to make me feel like less of a failure. He's so romantic, she was telling them. Always surprising me with these beautiful moments. I watched her face light as she talked about our future together. Our plans to travel. The apartment we were going to get, that we were going to build. All based on a version of me that existed only in her imagination. And I realized I was going to destroy her just like I destroyed Sarah. Not because I didn't care about her, but because I cared more about feeling good about than I did about being honest with her. 6 months with Jessica. 6 months of her believing I was someone worth loving. 6 months of me knowing I was going to destroy everything and doing it anyway. The end came at Emma's actual wedding, because of course it did. My family's big moment seemed to be where I do my worst damage. Jessica was excited to meet everyone. She'd heard so many of my edited stories about my difficult family, that she was practically vibrating with protective energy. Ready to show them how wrong they were about me. She bought a new dress, spent hours getting ready, kept telling me how proud she was to be my date, how she couldn't wait to celebrate my sister with me. I should have told her the truth before we walked into that church. Should have admitted that my consulting business was still just an idea, that my difficult family was actually just disappointed in me for good reasons, that everything she loved about me was carefully constructed fiction. But watching her straighten my tie in the car, seeing how happy she was to be there with me, I couldn't do it. Sister is going to love me, she said, kissing my cheek. I can't wait to hear embarrassing stories about as a kid. My stomach dropped, because I knew exactly what stories my family would tell. The ceremony was beautiful. Emma looked radiant. Her husband David seemed like the kind of man who actually had his together, steady job, clear goals, the ability to commit to someone without using them as emotional scaffolding. Everything I wasn't. At the reception, Jessica charmed everyone. She asked my aunts about their jobs, complimented my mom's dress, even got my dad laughing with stories about her work in marketing. For a brief, shining moment, I thought maybe I could pull this off. Maybe my family would be impressed that I'd found someone like Jessica. Maybe they'd finally see me as something other than a disappointment. Then Uncle Jerry found us at the bar. Well, he said, that same smug smile from the graduation party. Marcus actually brought someone and she seems normal. Jessica, this is my Uncle Jerry, I said, already feeling the familiar of embarrassment. Oh, the famous Uncle Jerry. Jessica extended her hand with a warm smile. Marcus has told me so much about. I watched Jerry's eyebrows raise. Has he now? And what exactly has Marcus told about me? Warning bells were screaming in my head, but Jessica was already talking. About how I've always pushed him to be better. He says we're the one who encouraged him to start his consulting business. The silence that followed was deafening. Jerry looked at me with some between confusion and amusement. Consulting business. It's still in development, I said quickly, but Jerry was already turning back to Jessica. I'm sorry dear, but I think there's been some confusion. Marcus works at Sporting Goods, has for the past 8-month time. I watched Jessica's face change, confusion first, then understanding, then something worse. No, she said, looking at me. He's launching his business consulting firm. He's been working on the business plan for months, Jessica. I started, but Jerry wasn't done. Business plan. This is the same nephew who proposed to his last girlfriend at my other niece's graduation party. Made this elaborate engagement story to try to embarrass me, if can believe it. The words hit Jessica like a physical. I could see her processing everything, the story I told her about Sarah, the consulting business. The version of me she thought she knew. Propose, she whispered. Oh yes, Jerry continued, clearly enjoying himself now. Poor Sarah was mortified. Left him right there at the table. Can't say I blamed her. Jessica turned to look at me, and I saw my reflection in her eyes. Not the man she thought she loved, but the truth I'd been hiding for 10 months. A leer. A user. Someone who would rather destroy the people who cared about him than admit he wasn't who he pretended to be. Excuse me, she said and walked away from the table. I followed her outside, my heart hammering against my ribs. She was standing by, her car keys already in her hand. Jessica, please, let me explain. Explain what, Marcus? That everything told me about is a lie. That used last girlfriend the same way been using me. It's not the same thing. Isn't it? She turned to face me, tears streaming down her cheeks. Told me Sarah couldn't handle ambition. Told me she left because she didn't believe in, but proposed to her to win an argument with uncle. Humiliated her in front of entire family. I was going to propose for real, I said weakly. I had the ring. Just like we're going to start that consulting business for real. Just like we're going to be man pretended to be for real. She was right, about all of it. I said, because it was the only truth I had left. Jessica laughed, but there was no humor in it. Don't love me, Marcus. Love the idea of me. Love having someone who believes are better than are. But don't actually love me cause don't even know me. That's not true. When's my birthday, Marcus? The question hit me like a... I opened my mouth to answer and realized I didn't know. 9 months together and I didn't know when she was born. See, she said softly. We've been so busy performing this version of that never bothered to learn who I actually am. I'm just a prop in the story tell about being misunderstood. She got in her car and rolled down the window. I feel sorry for, she said. Not because family treats badly, but because it made it impossible for anyone to treat well. Every person who tries to love, turn into a victim of own selfishness. I watched her drive away, then went back inside to face my family's pitying looks and knowing glances. Emma found me sitting alone at our table an hour later. She seemed really nice. She said quietly. Yeah, she was, Marcus. Emma sat down next to me. Can I ask something? I nodded. Do you actually want to be better or do you just want people to think are better? The question hung in the air between us like a challenge. I don't know. I admitted. I honestly don't know anymore. Because if actually wanted to be better, it'd start with being honest. About who are, where are, what are actually working toward. And if I don't want to be better. Emma looked at me with something that might have been compassion. Then keep doing this. Keep finding women who believe in potential are never going to live too. Keep using their love as a bandage for problems refuse to fix. She was right. I could already feel starting to craft the story I'd tell the next woman. How Jessica couldn't handle my complicated family situation. How she left when things got difficult. How I deserved someone who would stand by me. All lies, but comfortable lies. That was 8 months ago. I haven't dated anyone since. Not because I've suddenly developed self-awareness, but because I finally understand what I am. I'm the guy who proposes to get back at his uncle. Who invents businesses to impress strangers. Who turns every woman's love into a weapon against his own inadequacy. I'm the embarrassment Uncle Jerry said I was, just not for the reasons he thought. Sarah's getting married next month. To a guy who apparently knew how to propose without turning it into performance art. Jessica got promoted at work and bought her first house. Emma and David just announced they're expecting. Everyone moved on. Everyone grew. Everyone except me. I'm still here. Still crafting victim stories. Still convinced that the next person who believes in me will somehow fix what's broken inside me. But here's what I've learned. Can't build a relationship on someone else's faith in who might become.